wherein we are led to marvel at the readiness with which an honest man of timid and gentle nature can commit a horrible crime. Profoundly distressed by the dark utterances of young Maurice, Monsieur Sariette took a motor omnibus, and went to see Père Guinardon, his friend, his only friend, the one person in the whole world whom it gave him pleasure to see and hear. When Monsieur Sariette entered the shop in the Rue de Courcelles, Guinardon was alone, dozing in the depths of an antique armchair. His face, surrounded by his curly hair and luxuriant beard, was crimson in hue. Little violet filaments spread a network about the fleshy part of his nose, to which the wines of Burgundy had imparted a purple tint, for there was no longer any disguising the fact. Père Guinardon drank. 2 feet away from him, on the fair Octavie's work-table, a rose, all but withered, drooped in an empty vase, and in a basket a piece of embroidery was lying unfinished and neglected. The young Octavie's absences from the shop were growing more and more frequent, and Monsieur Blancmesnil never called when she was not there. The reason of this was that they were meeting 3 times a week at 5 o'clock in a house close to the Champs-Élysées. Père Guinardon knew nothing of that. He did not know the full extent of his misfortune, but he suffered. Monsieur Sariette shook his old friend by the hand, but he did not inquire for the young Octavie, for he refused to recognize the connection. He would sooner have talked about Zéphirine, who had been so cruelly deserted, and whom he hoped the old man would make his lawful wife. But Monsieur Sariette was prudent. He contented himself with asking Guinardon how he was. Perfectly well, was Guinardon's reply, but he felt ill, for either age and lovemaking had undermined his sturdy constitution, or else young Octavie's faithlessness had dealt her lover a fatal blow. God be praised, he went on, I still retain my powers of mind and body. I am chaste. Be chaste, Sariette. Chastity is strength. That evening Père Guinardon had taken some specially valuable books out of the Kingwood cabinet to show to a distinguished bibliophile, Monsieur Victor Meyer, and after the latter's departure he had dropped off to sleep without putting them back in their places. Books had an attraction for Monsieur Sariette, and seeing these particular volumes on the marble top of the cabinet, he began to examine them with interest. The first one he looked at was La Pucelle, in Morocco, with the English continuation. Doubtless it pained his patriotic and Christian heart to admire its text and illustrations, but a good copy was always virtuous and pure in his sight. Continuing to chat very affectionately with Guinardon, he picked up, one by one, the books which the antiquary had, for one reason or another, binding, illustrations, distinguished ownership, or scarcity, added to his stock. Suddenly a glorious shout of joy and love broke from his lips. He had discovered the Lucretius of the Prior de Vendôme, his Lucretius, and he was clasping it to his bosom. Once again I behold you, he sighed, as he pressed it to his lips. At first Père Guinardon could not quite make out what his old friend was talking about, but when the latter declared to him that the volume was from the d'Esparvieu collection, that it belonged to him, Sariette, and that he was going to take it away without further ado, the antiquary completely woke up, got on his legs, declared emphatically that the book belonged to him, Guinardon, by right of true and lawful purchase, and that he would not part with it unless he got 5,000 francs for it cash down. You don't take in what I am telling you, answered Sariette. The book belongs to the d'Esparvieu library, I must restore it to its place. Pas de cier, Lisette, hummed Guinardon. The book belongs to me, I tell you. You are crazy, my good Sariette. And noticing that, as a matter of fact, the librarian had a wandering look in his eye, he took the book from him, and tried to change the conversation. Have you seen, Sariette, that the rascals are going to rip up the Palais Mazarine, and cover up the very heart and center of the old town, the finest and most venerable place in the whole of Paris, with the deuce knows what works of art of theirs? They are worse than the Vandals, for the Vandals, although they destroyed the buildings of antiquity, did not replace them with hideous and disgusting erections and atrocious bridges like the Pont d'Alexandre. And your poor Rue Garancier, Sariette, has fallen a prey to the barbarians.
What have they done with the pretty bronze mask of the palace fountain?
Monsieur Sariette never listened to a word of all this.
Guinardon, you have not understood me. Now listen. This book belongs to the d'Esparvieu library. It was taken away, how or by whom I know not. Dreadful and mysterious things went on in that library. But, anyhow, the book was stolen.
I need scarcely appeal to your sentiments of scrupulous probity, my dear friend. You would not like to be regarded as the receiver of stolen goods.
Give me the book.
I will return it to Monsieur d'Esparvieu, who will duly requite you, of that you may be sure. Rely on his generosity, and you will be acting like the downright good fellow that you are.
The antiquary smiled a bitter smile. Catch me relying on the generosity of that old curmudgeon of a d'Esparvieu.
Why, he'd skin a flea to get its coat. Look at me, Sariette, old boy, and tell me if I look like a dunderhead. You know perfectly well that d'Esparvieu refused to give 50 francs in a second-hand shop for a portrait of Alexander d'Esparvieu, the founder of the family, by her cent, and that consequently the founder of the family has had to remain on the boulevard Montparnasse, propped against a Jew hawker's stall, just opposite the cemetery, where all the dogs of the neighborhood come and make water on him.
Catch me trusting to Monsieur d'Esparvieu's liberality.
You've got some bright ideas in your head, you have. Very well, Guinardon, I myself will undertake to pay you any indemnity that a board of arbitrators may fix upon.
Do you hear? Now don't go and do the handsome for people who won't give you so much as a thank you.
This man, d'Esparvieu, has taken your knowledge, your energies, your whole life for a salary that even a valet wouldn't accept.
So leave that idea alone. In any case, it is too late. The book is sold.
Sold?
To whom? Asked Sariette in agonized tones. What does that matter? You'll never see it again. You'll hear no more about it. It's off to America. To America.
The Lucretius with the arms of Philippe de Vendôme and Marginalia in Voltaire's own hand.
My Lucretius off to America. Père Guinardon began to laugh.
My dear Sariette, you remind me of the Chevalier de Greux when he learns that his darling mistress is to be transported to the Mississippi.
My dear mistress going to the Mississippi, says he. No.
No, answered Sariette, very pale, this book shall not go to America.
It shall return, as it ought, to the d'Esparvieu library. Let me have it, Guinardon. The antiquary made a second attempt to put an end to an interview that now looked as if it might take an ugly turn. My good Sariette, you haven't told me what you think of my Greco. You never so much as glanced at it.
It is an admirable piece of work all the same.
And Guinardon, putting the picture in a good light, went on.
Now just look at St. Francis here, the poor man of the Lord, the brother of Jesus. See how his fuliginous body rises heavenward like the smoke from an agreeable sacrifice, like the sacrifice of Abel. Give me the book, Guinardon, said Sariette, without turning his head, give me the book. The blood suddenly flew to Père Guinardon's head. That's enough of it, he shouted, as red as a turkey cock, the veins standing out on his forehead. And he dropped the Lucretius into his jacket pocket. Straightway old Sariette flew at the antiquary, assailed him with sudden fury, and, frail and weakly as he was, butted him back into young Octavie's armchair. Guinardon, in furious amazement, belched forth the most horrible abuse on the old maniac and gave him a punch that sent him staggering back 4 paces against the Coronation of the Virgin, by Fra Angelico, which fell down with a crash. Sariette returned to the charge, and tried to drag the book out of the pocket in which it lay hid. This time Père Guinardon would really have floored him had he not been blinded by the blood that was rushing to his head, and hit sideways at the worktable of his absent mistress. Sariette fastened himself on to his bewildered adversary, held him down in the armchair, and with his little bony hands clutched him by the neck, which, red as it was already, became a deep crimson. Guinardon struggled to get free, but the little fingers, feeling the mass of soft, warm flesh about them, embedded themselves in it with delicious ecstasy. Some unknown force made them hold fast to their prey. Guinardon's throat began to rattle, saliva was oozing from one corner of his mouth. His enormous frame quivered now and again beneath the grasp, but the tremors grew more and more intermittent and spasmodic. At last they ceased. The murderous hands did not let go their hold. Sariette had to make a violent effort to loose them. His temples were buzzing. Nevertheless, he could hear the rain falling outside, muffled steps going past on the pavement, newspaper men shouting in the distance. He could see umbrellas passing along in the dim light. He drew the book from the dead man's pocket and fled. The fair Octavie did not go back to the shop that night. She went to sleep in a little entresol underneath the bric-a-brac stores which Monsieur de Blancmesnil had recently bought for her in this same Rue de Courcelles. The workman whose task it was to shut up the shop found the antiquary's body still warm. He called Madame Lenine, the concierge, who laid Guinardon on the couch, lit a couple of candles, put a sprig of box in a saucer of holy water, and closed the dead man's eyes. The doctor who was called in to certify the death ascribed it to apoplexy. Zéphirine, informed of what had happened by Madame Lenine, hastened to the house, and sat up all night with the body. The dead man looked as if he were sleeping. In the flickering light of the candles El Greco's saint mounted upwards like a wreath of smoke, the gold of the primitives gleamed in the shadows. Near the deathbed a little woman by Baudouin was plainly discernible giving herself a douche. All through the night Zéphirine's lamentations could be heard 50 yards away. He's dead, she kept saying. My friend, my divinity, my all, my love, but no. He is not dead, he moves. It is I, Michel, your Zéphirine. Awake, hear me. Answer me, I love you, if ever I caused you pain, forgive me. Dead. Dead. Oh my God. See how beautiful he is. He was so good, so clever, so kind. My God. My God. My God. If I had been there, he would not now be lying dead. Michel. Michel. When morning came, she was silent. They thought she had fallen asleep. She was dead too.